Fear is probably one of the hardest obstacles in my life that I've had to overcome. Having a fear of heights or like tight spaces or flying, stuff like that is pretty standard for most people, but when fear racks every single instance of your life and leaves you debilitated like it did for me, it can be a little overwhelming. I want to discuss today the fear complex that we put ourselves in and how I was able to extract myself from the pain of being afraid of pretty much everything. Today I'll discuss how bad it got for me, the turning point which changed my mind and how I thought about fear, and how do I deal with it today when fear, of course, keeps cropping itself up in instances in my daily life. I was the loneliest I've ever been in the sophomore year of high school. I was 15 and I was about to get my driver's license, and I was hanging out exclusively with my mom. And for a teenage boy about to get the freedom to go anywhere.
Take a look at this.
What is it?
Blood.
Gross.
Jill.
I just wanted to stay home. I had stopped calling my friends. I had stopped pursuing girls. I wasn't interested in sports, even though I kept playing baseball just as an obligation to my team. My dad had moved out after living in the office downstairs for like a year or more, and my mom was starting to date some weirdos, and I didn't care for them. Fear had brought me to a depression that I never thought would end. The only joy I had in my life was going out to eat with my grandma and mom once a week. What was he holding? It's a film. Not Kenneth. You bastards. I spent a lot of time in my bedroom failing to make games on my Commodore 64 and wishing one of my friends would call me, which they never did. I was afraid to take any action. I had built up these like delusions about the world and how it worked, and I thought I knew why no one was calling me. And I was too afraid to call them and get honest about kind of how extremely scared I was about everything. I was scared of phone calls. I was scared to say the wrong thing. I was scared of upsetting anyone at any time. I was scared of dressing wrong or doing my hair what I felt was wrong, liking things that were unpopular. I had built up this wall of fear that prevented me from moving without being concerned if it was the right direction. Like, I can't go anywhere in this hall without finding Wesker. I gotta find the right direction to go. Jesus. And unfortunately for me, I picked the exact worst direction to overcome these issues I was having with fear. Both of my best friends were fearless. I think it's because they didn't give a shit about anything. I looked up to their ability to have a thought and just do it. I wanted the freedom to be able to act without consideration. Nice, got the map. And a lot of what we got into because of that was not good, but the feeling behind it was something that I wanted. At such a young age, I had no way to express any of this or ask for help to improve myself with these friends of mine. I wanted what they had, which was confidence and what I felt like was fearlessness. But I had no way to really kind of go about any kind of constructive way to talk to them about that. I wonder what's on the other side of this door, you know. I just went along with them, and when they stopped calling me, stopped pulling me into their life, I had like no ability to reach out and tell them I needed their help and that I didn't know what to do. I was just thinking about it, making me tear up a little bit. I was extremely isolated and alone. When one of my friends was shot walking home from school, it was kind of my opportunity to insert myself back into his life. I visited him in the hospital, and we started hanging out again, and I was basically ready to do whatever it took to not feel afraid and alone anymore. I really just wanted to hang out with him, or anybody at that point. Where's that groaning zombie noise coming from? And my buddy, he was the antithesis to my fear, you know. Problem was, he was also a drug addict. Drugs and alcohol were a godsend for me. I was free to be outgoing and wild, and I didn't care anymore. I thought I was finally able to be social, and then I found the magic elixir that would carry me into parties and help me get friends and girls, and, you know, life would finally be what I wanted it to be. I kind of abandoned all sanity and rational thought for more of its intoxicating freedom. Depression was never coming back, and I was going to be happy again. Yes, at least that's what I thought. Then the crash of reality of becoming a drug addict and alcoholic hit me right in the face. It was like that scene in Pinocchio where he starts turning into the donkey. I was like, oh no, wait, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't me, you know. But it was too late. I was already spinning in the drain of addiction, and now fear was the least of my worries. In fact, I kind of became enhanced and shined up on my fear. Like, it just got worse. At first, it was a solution for me, but it quickly stopped working and became just a mess. Trying to keep the drug addiction going by just adding more and more mess, and life just gets super chaotic and crazy when you're in that. And on top of all that, I was afraid of getting caught now. When fear has you backed into a corner, you look at pretty desperate ways to overcome it. And I chose drugs and alcohol, and, you know, many people turn to that to kind of rip the Band-Aid off of their fear issues, but sometimes it gets even more desperate with people, you know, ending it all. Will you take the green herb? Yes. And I shall eat the green herb. Be careful when you eat green herb, kids. I was super lucky to get sober in high school, but now I was repairing all the damage I caused in my life. And I knew that kind of fear, that whole fear thing was the first thing I needed to work through, or it was going to kill me. I'd eventually start doing drugs again, and who knows what would happen. So I had to do something. Nothing I was ever told about fear seemed rational to me. I always looked at my dad as fearless, and, you know, he tried to tell me some things about fear and how to overcome them as a kid. But it always sounded so impossible. It sounded like that would never work for me. I think that's the biggest dilemma for people that are afraid. You have to figure it out alone. No one can really tell you, because being told something that seems impossible doesn't give an afraid person any confidence. You kind of have to step off the high dive and find out that the fall and the splash are fun and that you survived it. Anyone describing the exhilaration of some new adventure, it's just like a cloud floating by. Let's combine these two things together here. There we go. Anyone describing the exhilaration of some new adventure is just like a whiff of an idea that just seems out of reach. It all seems super unattainable, and that everyone else gets it, but you don't get it, you know. And I'm dead. God dang it. I started doing all the things that I was afraid of a little bit at a time. Then talking to girls. People weren't so scary, and then girls weren't so confusing and also weren't so scary. It was just the act of doing those things instead of just being afraid of trying something helped tremendously.
Just do it!
I had built up this vision, kind of mind reading it at the worst of what was going to happen if I did something, you know, no matter what it was. I imagined how all the conversations would go, and I moved on to phone calls. Can I open this? Secret door. I moved on to phone calls and expressing opinions and going out to places where social events were happening. You know, all these things seemed impossibly scary. But afterwards, I realized that I could survive. I may not have enjoyed everything I was doing, but I survived it. And doing something scary was survivable, or I felt like that was not the case previously. And once I realized this fact, the fear stopped having such a death grip on my throat. It wasn't until I put myself into these scary situations that I realized that it was safe. It wasn't like I went to one event and then the next day fear was gone. I was, completely absent of fear. No, it took some time. It took a lot of different events, going to different things, being scared there, feeling nervous there, but being there anyway. Growing up, I was a huge stand-up comedy fan. I memorized comedy albums and routines, and there was kind of a stand-up renaissance going on in the 80s. And for me, I ate it up. I watched Eddie Murphy specials and memorized all the bits. And I watched this nightly stand-up show they used to have on Fox. This is back before Comedy Central. Oh, back here. Made a big loop-de-loop. I studied Cheech and Chong and George Carlin and the Smothers Brothers and Steve Martin. I would repeat those routines to my mom and sometimes my friends to get a laugh. Nope. I don't have the ammo for that guy. The thought that I could one day do that, though, like actually be a comedian with material of my own, was so out of the question. I never even thought, you would think, as much as I loved comedy, that would be a goal of mine, but it wasn't even something I thought was possible, so I never even considered it. I couldn't even call a store and ask if they had something I was looking for. I was so afraid of stammering on the phone and sounding like an idiot that I would drive to the store and spend an hour walking around looking for whatever the thing was. I wouldn't even ask somebody there if they had it. I was just deathly afraid of looking like an idiot or doing something wrong, or sounding wrong. It was unreasonable looking back on it now. It would have been way easier just to call, ask the guy, do you have the thing? Yes. Can you set it aside? Okay. Yeah. But that's, after years of doing things that were scary over and over again, I realized it's not so scary. When I was presented with the opportunity to take a stand-up comedy course at the Improv, I said yes, and then threw up. It was probably one of the scariest things that I said yes to try to overcome fear. This was a childhood dream of mine, and everything I learned told me I needed to say yes to this, to step out on the edge of the diving board and out onto the stage. In the first class in the comedy school or comedy courses that I took, they have you up on stage. They want you getting comfortable with being up on stage, which makes a lot of sense. Every class you'd prepare your routine for like a tight 5 minutes on stage. And you would think doing it for a small class would be way easy compared to a crowd, but it's much harder to do in front of everyone that's in this learning environment. It's not the same as having a big crowd that's there to laugh. You say a joke and they just start laughing. In class, some of your jokes aren't hitting yet, and it doesn't work out or whatever, and it's much, much harder. I learned pretty quick, though, that my experience with fear was proving true here as well. When I did it, I survived. I drove away from that first class intact, still breathing. I hadn't died. Not physically. Those jokes weren't great day one. But I did stand-up comedy for 3 years. Going to open mics in weird bars and driving all over Southern California. I ran a comedy night twice a month at the Improv with some comedian friends of mine. I also tried out for Last Comic Standing, and I filmed a comedy pilot for another TV show that never aired. All these things were scary, every single one of them. I did them anyway. I stepped out in front of what seemed like a bus. But instead of a bus, it was just a cloud of smoke. And every time I did it, the bus became less and less visible, and the enjoyment of getting on stage and making people laugh took over. Fear is so much more about knowing that it will be okay anyway. It doesn't go away, and it can't be banished, because really it's our mind's way of protecting us from dangerous situations. But safety doesn't have to be neglect, and it can be overcome if we want it to. You have to
Just do it!
Thanks so much for watching. This whole video and the preparation for it has been a real emotional ride for me. I appreciate you being here, and if you need to talk, let's do it in the comments down below. You can also send me a message. I have my contact information in the description if you ever need to get a hold of me. And thanks so much. I will see you in the next video.